She didn't ask politely. She didn't beg. She stood on his porch with snow in her hair and said, "I'm looking for work," like it was the last solid thing she had left. Ethan Cole had turned men away for less. Strong men, armed men, men with horses and references. But something in the way this woman met his eyes made him hesitate. Not hopeful, not desperate, just steady. Like she'd already decided she would survive this moment, with or without his help. "You'll want town work," he said. "I don't," she replied. "I want honest work, far from people who talk." That landed harder than it should have. Winter had been circling his ranch for weeks, testing the fences, testing him. The Montana prairie lay stiff and colorless, the sky low and heavy with coming snow. Ethan hadn't planned on company this late in the season, especially not a lone woman walking up his ridge without a horse or escort. He studied her hands, scarred, chapped, wrapped in old cloth where the skin had split. Not soft, not ranch hardened either. Hands that had worked, hands that had learned pain. "What's your name?" he asked. "Margaret Hale. Folks call me Maggie." "Widowed," the pause said. Alone, the silence finished. "My housekeeper left," Ethan said. Said the quiet was eating her alive. Maggie nodded once. "Quiet doesn't scare me." The snow began falling in earnest, thick flakes, heavy. The kind that erased tracks and turned mistakes fatal. Ethan looked past her toward the empty ridge. If he sent her back now, she wouldn't make town before dark. And despite his reputation for coldness, he wasn't made of stone. "You'll find more than wages here," he said slowly. "Work starts before dawn. Days are long. This land doesn't tolerate foolishness, and I don't keep people who quit." She didn't flinch. "I don't quit." He held her gaze a moment longer, then stepped aside. "Bunkhouse is out back. Stove works. Blankets are clean. We'll talk pay in the morning." She let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Thank you." "Don't," he said. "You might regret it by sunrise." She did not. 3 mornings later, Ethan found her in the yard before dawn, fumbling with leather straps by lantern light. Snow crunched under his boots as he approached. "That's a bridle," he said. "Horse don't need it for mucking stalls." She startled, then nodded. "Then I'll use the halter." No excuses, no embarrassment. He told her where the feed bins were, how many scoops per animal, where the ice broke easiest on the troughs. She listened like a woman memorizing scripture. By noon, the stalls were clean, water hauled, a section of fence mended with wire and stubborn will. Her hands bled through torn cloth. "That's enough," Ethan called. She straightened, didn't argue, just nodded and walked away. That night, he set 2 plates, one in the kitchen, one in the dining room. A line drawn clean and clear. Rancher and hired hand. That was safer. Near midnight, the chickens screamed. Ethan was out the door with his rifle before his boots were fully on. He skidded to a stop in the yard. Maggie stood by the henhouse in her nightdress and coat, his spare rifle braced against her shoulder. Firelight painted her in sharp gold and shadow. 3 wolves circled beyond the fence, eyes bright as coins. She fired a warning shot. The wolves scattered but didn't flee. Ethan moved beside her without a word, threw a torch, fired again. Together they drove the pack back into the hills. When the silence returned, they stood shoulder to shoulder, breath rising in white clouds. "You can shoot," he said. "My father taught me," she replied. Said a woman alone needs to know how to stand her ground. Her feet were bare in unlaced boots. She was shaking, cold, adrenaline, maybe both. "Those chickens are staying alive," she said quietly. That almost made him smile. Almost. The town noticed her before it noticed her work. By Sunday, whispers followed Ethan into the general store. Martha Doyle's eyes flicked toward the door, then back to him. "Heard you hired a woman," she said carefully. "I needed help," Ethan replied. She needed work. "Folks are talking." "Folks always do." Warren Pierce blocked the doorway when Ethan turned to leave. "Banker, moral compass, thin as wire and twice as sharp. That woman," Pierce said. "You sure she's respectable?" Ethan stepped closer. "She's respectable enough to mind her business. You might try the same." Pierce smiled without warmth. "Just friendly advice." Ethan bought supplies he hadn't planned on: flour, nails, and a wool-lined winter coat, medium size. He didn't explain himself to the shopkeeper. Back at the ranch, he found Maggie at the kitchen table reading by lamplight. A worn Bible lay open. He set the coat down. "Snow's getting worse. You'll need this." She touched the fabric like it might disappear. "I can't pay you back." "Didn't ask you to." Her eyes lifted, raw and confused. "Why are you kind to me?" Ethan swallowed. "Maybe I know what it's like to need a place that doesn't ask questions." She held the coat to her chest, didn't cry, just nodded. That night, the ranch settled into a rhythm older than words. Work. Silence. Shared meals left at a careful distance. Something fragile had begun. Neither of them dared name it yet. The ranch found its rhythm without asking permission. Work before dawn. Breath turning white. Gates creaking like old bones. Maggie learned the language of the place fast. The sound a fence made when it needed mending. The way cattle shifted before weather. The silence that meant snow was coming hard. Ethan taught without talking much. Showed her how to coil rope, how to throw with her shoulder instead of her arm. She missed more than she caught, but she never quit. Not once. Her hands healed rough and strong. 6 weeks passed. November folded into December and the cold stayed. One morning the pump ran dry. Ice had seized the pipes solid. Ethan swore softly and stared at the frozen handle. "It'll take days to fix." Maggie stood nearby, feeding the chickens. "Then we haul from the creek." "That'll freeze you." She shrugged. "Cold doesn't scare me." He hesitated. The spare bedroom was warmer. The main house had a stove that held heat. The bunkhouse did not. "You can use the spare room until it's fixed," he said. "People already talk." Quote, "People always do," she replied, echoing him. That night, they ate together for the first time. Venison stew, biscuits, coffee strong enough to wake the dead. They sat across from each other, the fire snapping low between them. "This is good," Ethan said. She almost smiled. "My mother taught me to cook before she taught me hymns." "She sounds wise." She was. Loss settled in the room like dust. After supper, Maggie hummed while mending a harness. A simple hymn. Old. Familiar. "What's that?" Ethan asked. "Something my mama sang. Come thou fount." Quote. She sang it proper, soft, steady. The barn seemed to listen. When she finished, Ethan nodded once. "Your mama had good taste." They worked in a different silence after that. Not empty. Shared. Christmas came quiet. No stockings. No laughter. Just pine boughs over the mantel and candles in the windows. Ethan carved a small wooden bird from scrap pine. Simple. Careful. On Christmas Eve, Maggie set 2 plates without asking. Roasted chicken. Potatoes. Carrots from the root cellar. Afterward, Ethan set the bird on the mantel. "That's beautiful," Maggie said. "Made one once," he replied, "for a child who never came." Her breath caught. "I had a daughter, Lily." Fever took her. They didn't rush the words. Let them sit. "My husband said it was my fault," she added quietly. "Town agreed." Ethan stared into the fire. "My wife died in childbirth. Town said I worked her too hard." They shared the weight without trying to fix it. "Maybe we're just tired of running," Maggie said. "Maybe," Ethan replied. They stayed by the fire until dawn. Close, careful, not touching. The blizzard came 3 days later. It erased the world in an hour. Cattle stranded in the far pasture. Feed running low. "I'm going," Ethan said, loading the sled. "Not alone," Maggie said, pulling on her coat. The wind hit like fists. They followed the fence by feel. Counted cattle by touch. 2 missing. On the way back, the snow gave way beneath Maggie's feet. Black water swallowed her scream. Ethan hauled her out with everything he had, forced her legs to move, dragged her to the line shack before the cold could finish its work. Inside, he stripped wet clothes with shaking hands, wrapped her in every blanket, added his own body heat, because there was no other choice. "Stay awake," he whispered. "I'm here," she breathed. Through the night, the storm howled. Nothing improper happened. Everything changed. They returned home alive, half frozen, exhausted. The town was waiting. Whispers grew teeth. Warren Pierce smiled too often. Credit tightened. Eyes sharpened. 8 days later, Pierce rode up. "Concerned citizen," he said. "You were alone with her, for days. Say what you came to say. Send her away, for her sake." That night, Ethan spoke the words he hated. Maggie went still. "You told me this place was different," she said. "It is." "Then prove it." She packed before he found his courage. Jasper, his ranch hand, didn't soften it. "You're scared, and you're letting them win." The words burned because they were true. Sunday morning, Ethan walked into the church like a man to the gallows. He spoke plain, named the judgment, claimed the truth. "I care for her," he said. "If that's shame, judge me." Quote. He didn't look back. He found Maggie at the hotel, small room, narrow bed, light from an alley window. "I should have stood sooner," he said. "I'm choosing you every day." She searched his face, long, hard. Then she nodded. They rode home together under a winter sky that no longer felt so heavy. Something had been broken. Something else had chosen to live. They did not speak much on the ride back. The wind cut across the prairie, sharp and steady, carrying the smell of snowmelt and earth waking from sleep. Maggie rode beside Ethan, her hands steady on the reins, her face turned forward. Not distant, not angry, just careful, like someone walking across thin ice, choosing each step on purpose. The ranch came into view slow and familiar. Fences standing, smoke lifting from the chimney. Home, waiting the way it always had, silent, unjudging. When they dismounted, Ethan tied both horses before speaking. He needed his hands busy. "I told them the truth," he said at last. "All of it." Maggie nodded. "That takes courage." "I should have had it sooner." "Yes," she said simply. "No cruelty, just truth." They went inside together. The door closed soft behind them. Life did not suddenly turn easy. Spring took its time. Snow lingered in the shadows. Mud swallowed boots. Repairs stacked faster than daylight. But something between them had shifted. Not passion, not promises. Something steadier. Partnership. Maggie took on more of the ranch without asking. Learned at accounts. Kept tallies. Knew which calf belonged to which cow. Ethan trusted her with decisions he'd never trusted anyone else to make. They ate together now. No separation, no lines drawn in fear. Some nights they talked. About nothing. About everything. Other nights they sat in silence, listening to the wind move through the grass like a living thing. The town did not forget. Martha Doyle came first. One Sunday afternoon, she arrived with a pot of stew and an awkward smile. "Thought you might need a break from cooking," she said. Maggie thanked her kindly. Ethan said nothing, but he noticed Martha's eyes soften when Maggie laughed. Others followed slower. A nod at the store. A greeting instead of a stare. Not forgiveness, but less hunger. Warren Pierce stayed distant. Cold, watching. Ethan did not care. One evening, they walked the ridge where Maggie had first appeared months before. Snow had melted there, leaving damp earth and stubborn grass. "This is where I decided," Ethan said, "the day you showed up." "Decided what?" "That I wasn't done living. I just didn't know it yet." Maggie stopped walking, looked at him fully. "I didn't come here looking for love," she said. "I came here to survive." "I know. But somewhere along the way," she continued, "survival turned into something else." He reached for her hand, not rushed, not tentative. She let him, The wind moved around them. The land watched, patient and wide. They married quietly. No church, no crowd, just open sky and two witnesses. Jasper stood grinning. Martha wiped her eyes. Ethan's vows were plain. "Every good thing worth having comes the hard way." Maggie's voice did not shake. "Then we'll work for it. Together." He slid the ring onto her finger. Simple, honest. When they kissed, it was soft. Sure, like a promise meant to last. That night, they stood in the doorway of the main house, looking out at the land they had chosen again and again. The wooden bird still sat on the mantel, catching firelight. A small thing, a stubborn thing. Maggie wore the winter coat he'd bought her, though spring had warmed the air. She wore it because it mattered. "Funny," she said, "the thing that saved me was work." Ethan smiled. "Work saves most things. If you don't quit." She leaned into him. He rested his forehead against hers. Outside, the wolves howled far off, not threatening, just present. "Do you ever miss them?" Maggie asked softly. "Every day." "Me too." They stood with that truth between them, not heavy now, shared. Spring came all at once. Green pushed through dead grass. The creek ran clear and loud. Calves were born strong. Fences held. The land breathed easier. The town settled into its own rhythm. Some stayed distant. Some came around. Warren Pierce never apologized, but he stopped circling. That was enough. One evening, as the sun dropped low and painted the hills gold, Ethan and Maggie sat on the porch, boots muddy, hands tired. "I don't feel cold anymore," Maggie said. Ethan looked at her, at the woman who had walked out of winter and chosen to stay. "Neither do I." The door behind them stood open. Light spilled out onto the land. Home wasn't given. It was earned. Together. Summer did not arrive gently. It came loud and fast, the way hard seasons often do. The creek swelled with meltwater and rushed past the banks, brown and impatient. Grass shot up knee-high in places, hiding rocks and old holes that could break a leg if you weren't watching. The days stretched long, filled with heat, flies, and the kind of work that left muscles aching even after sleep. Maggie took to it like she had always belonged there. She rose before Ethan now, coffee ready, boots on, hair tied back tight. She rode fence without complaint, learned to spot trouble before it announced itself, and spoke to the animals with a calm that surprised him. The cattle responded to her. Chickens followed her like gossip. Ethan watched, quiet and careful. Pride sat heavy in his chest. Not the loud kind, the steady kind. Still, some habits were slow to die. He woke some nights convinced the house was too quiet, that if he listened hard enough, he'd hear loss breathing in the walls. He would lie still, counting Maggie's breaths beside him, grounding himself in the present. She never asked what haunted him. She understood without words. The trouble started with a fence. North pasture. Old posts. Spring floods had loosened the ground. Ethan spotted the damage too late. By the time he and Maggie rode out, 6 head had wandered through into open range. "Damn it," Ethan muttered, scanning the horizon. "We'll find them," Maggie said. "They won't go far." They split up, covering ground fast. Maggie followed tracks toward the low hills, the sun beating down hard. She found the cattle bunched near a stand of cottonwoods, uneasy but calm. She moved slow, careful, just like Ethan had taught her. Then the ground shifted. Her horse stumbled in a hidden washout and went down hard. Maggie hit the dirt, breath knocked clean from her lungs. Pain flared sharp in her ankle. She lay still for a moment, testing. It held weight, barely. "All right," she whispered. "We can do this." She got up, limped, used the cottonwood trunk to steady herself. She gathered the cattle on foot, one step at a time, sweat and grit streaking her face. By the time Ethan reached her, leading his horse hard, the cattle were moving back toward the fence. His face went pale when he saw her limp. "What happened?" "Nothing worth stopping over," she said. He dismounted and crouched, hands gentle but firm as he checked her ankle. That's swelling. I've had worse. That doesn't make it smart. She met his eyes. The cattle mattered. So do you. The words hung there, simple, heavy. He helped her onto his horse. Rode back slow, one arm steadying her at the waist. Neither spoke. The injury healed. Slowly. Maggie hated being idle. She took to mending tack, managing accounts, teaching Jasper's young nephew, who'd come out for the summer, how to hold a hammer without smashing his thumb. The ranch hummed with life. So did the town. By July, talk shifted again. Not whispers this time. Invitations. Church picnics. Polite smiles that tried to smooth over old judgments. Martha Doyle brought pie one afternoon and stayed to drink coffee. You've done good here, she said to Maggie. Both of you. Maggie smiled, warm but reserved. We're just working. Martha nodded. That's usually how it starts. Not everyone softened. Warren Pierce watched from a distance. His eyes lingered too long when Ethan wasn't looking. Maggie felt it like a prickle at the back of her neck. Predators didn't always bare teeth. Late August brought drought. The grass browned. The creek shrank. Dust coated everything. Each day became a calculation. Feed. Water. Time. Ethan spent long hours riding, checking stock, planning ahead. Maggie handled what she could, but the strain showed. One evening, as the sun sank red and angry, Ethan found her sitting on the porch steps, head in her hands. You didn't come in for supper, he said. I wasn't hungry. He sat beside her, waited. Sometimes, she said quietly, I'm afraid this piece is borrowed. He didn't rush to answer. I know, he said finally, so am I. She looked at him then. Really looked. What if something comes along that takes it away? Then we fight for it. And if fighting isn't enough, then we hold on anyway. She leaned into him. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders. The stars came out slow. One by one. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Thin envelope. Official seal. Ethan read it once. Then again. What is it? Maggie asked. He handed it to her. Notice of foreclosure review. Old debts. Pierce's bank. Land reassessment. They can't, she said. You've been current. Current doesn't always matter, Ethan replied. Not when someone wants what you've built. Maggie folded the letter carefully, hands steady despite the chill creeping up her spine. So what do we do? Ethan stared out across the land, the fences, the cattle, the house that had finally filled with life again. We prepare, he said. And we don't quit. She nodded, same as she had that first night on his porch. Outside, the wind shifted. The land went quiet. Something was coming. They did not sleep much after the letter. Ethan rose before dawn, not from habit this time, but from the tightness in his chest that would not ease. He sat at the kitchen table with the paper laid flat before him, reading the same lines again and again, as if repetition might change their meaning. Maggie joined him quietly. Set coffee down. Did not speak. The ranch woke around them, cattle shifting, wind brushing the eaves. Life going on, unaware of threats written in ink. They're calling the note early, Ethan said at last. Claiming the land's value has shifted, taxes reassessed, payments adjusted. Because of Pierce. Yes. Maggie took the letter, read it once, then folded it and set it aside. Then we answer them. With what? With truth, with work, with proof this place is worth keeping. Ethan looked at her. Tired, grateful, afraid. I've fought storms and sickness, he said. I don't know how to fight paper, quote. She reached across the table and covered his hand. Then we learn. They started with numbers. Old ledgers came, see daylight. Maggie spread them across the table, neat and methodical. She tracked costs. Feed. Repairs. sales, what they owed and what they'd earned since spring. "You've been careful," she said. "Too careful, maybe. You've paid on time every month." "Didn't matter before," Ethan replied. "Pierce likes leverage." "Then we remove it." They sold 2 steers early, took the hit, paid down what they could. Jasper hauled extra loads for neighbors and brought back cash instead of favors. Days blurred together, heat pressed down. Work stretched late into evening. One night, Maggie found Ethan in the barn long after dark, sitting on an overturned bucket, staring at nothing. "You can't carry this alone," she said. "I know," he replied. "I just don't know how to put it down." She sat beside him, let the quiet settle. "When Lily died," she said softly, "I thought if I worked hard enough, God would see it and give her back. When that didn't happen, I thought maybe he was punishing me." Ethan listened. The lantern hissed low. "It took me a long time to understand," she continued, "that loss isn't payment for failure. It's just loss. And fighting to keep what you love isn't pride. It's survival." He nodded once, slow. "Then we survive," he said. The meeting was set for Friday. Pierce's office sat on the edge of town, brick and glass, cool inside even in summer heat. Maggie insisted on going with him. "If they're going to look us in the eye," she said, "they'll see both of us." Pierce smiled when they entered. Polite, controlled. "Mr. Cole, Mrs. Cole," he said, lingering on the title. Ethan did not sit until Maggie did. "We're here about the notice," Ethan said. "Of course," Pierce replied. "Purely procedural." Maggie placed the ledgers on the desk. "We're current. We've improved the land, increased output. We want a review with an independent assessor." Pierce's smile thinned. "You're asking for favors." "No," Maggie said. "We're asking for fairness." Pierce leaned back. "Fairness is expensive." Ethan felt heat rise in his neck. Maggie's hand brushed his knee. "Steady. We'll contest it," she said, "and we'll make it public." Pierce's eyes flicked to her, sharp now. "You'd risk reputation again?" he asked. Maggie met his gaze. "I don't have one to lose." Silence stretched. Finally, Pierce nodded once. "File your request," he said. "We'll see." Outside, the air felt heavier. "That went better than I expected," Ethan said. "Don't mistake quiet for surrender," Maggie replied. The drought broke the next week. Rain came sudden and violent. Turned dust to mud. Swelled the creek. One of the old culverts gave way, flooding the lower pasture and washing out a section of fence. Ethan rode out before dawn. Maggie followed without asking. They worked in driving rain, reset posts, hauled wire, hands numb, clothes soaked through. At midday, Maggie slipped on slick ground and went down hard. Ethan reached her in seconds. "I'm fine," she insisted, pushing herself up. He caught her arm. "Don't." She stopped, looked at him, saw the fear he hadn't said out loud. "I'm still here," she said gently. "You don't lose me that easy." They finished the work slower, together. That night, the rain eased. The land drank deep. The town watched. Some offered help. A neighbor sent hay. Another brought tools. Not charity. Repayment for years of quiet fairness Ethan had never asked credit for. Martha Doyle stopped by with a pie and news. "Pierce is nervous," she said. "Word spreading." "Good," Maggie replied. Not everyone was kind. A notice appeared on the storeboard. Church council meeting. Discussion of land stewardship and moral responsibility. Ethan read it without comment. Maggie tore it down when no one was looking. "We answer in daylight," she said. "Not on paper." The assessor arrived 2 days before the deadline. Neutral, quiet, thorough. Maggie walked him the fields, showed him repairs, records, improvements made without loans. Ethan answered questions plainly. When the man left, he tipped his hat. "You've built something solid here," he said. Hope flickered. Small. Dangerous. That evening, as the sun sank low and gold, Ethan found Maggie at the ridge, standing where she'd first appeared months ago. "If this goes wrong," he said, "I don't want you tied to it." She turned, eyes steady. "You chose me in front of everyone," she said. "I'm not walking away because of ink and fear." He exhaled, long. "Then whatever comes," he said, "we face it together." She took his hand. Down in the valley, a rider appeared. Fast. Urgent. Jasper's horse. Ethan's chest tightened as the figure closed the distance, dust trailing behind. The land held its breath. Jasper pulled hard on the reins and slid to a stop, dust hanging in the air behind him. His face was flushed, eyes bright with something close to relief. "It's done," he said, breathless. "The review came through." Ethan didn't move, didn't speak. He had learned the cost of hope. "Well?" Maggie asked. Jasper grinned. "They ruled in your favor. Land value stands. Note stays as written. Pierce's leverage is gone." For a moment, the world went quiet. Then Ethan let out a breath he'd been holding since the first letter arrived. He leaned forward, hands braced on his knees, steadying himself. Maggie closed her eyes, just for a second. Jasper clapped Ethan on the shoulder. "Town's already buzzing. Pierce didn't show his face at the store this morning." "That'll change," Ethan said. "Men like him don't vanish." "Maybe not," Jasper replied, "but they back off when they lose." He tipped his hat and rode on, leaving dust and silence behind. The relief didn't come all at once, it came in pieces. In the way Ethan slept through the night without waking to count losses. In the way Maggie hummed while baking, the tune light and unguarded. In the way the ranch seemed to settle, like it had been holding its breath alongside them. They worked the rest of the day without talking much. There was still fencing to mend, still feed to move, still life to tend. But the weight had shifted. That evening, Ethan built a fire out back. Not because it was cold, because it felt right. They sat on overturned buckets, watching flames lick upward as dusk settled across the land. "I didn't know how to fight that kind of battle," Ethan said quietly. "Paper and words. Threats that don't leave tracks." Maggie nodded. "Neither did I, not at first." He looked at her then, at the woman who had walked out of winter and refused to leave. "You saved this place." She shook her head. "We did." The fire cracked. A spark lifted and vanished into the dark. Sunday came soft. No church, no speeches, no judgment waiting in wooden pews. Instead, neighbors arrived one by one. Not invited, not announced. Just showing up with food, tools, quiet nods. Martha Doyle brought bread still warm. A young couple dropped off seed they didn't need until fall. An older rancher Ethan barely knew stayed to help reset a post without saying a word. Pierce did not come. That absence spoke loud enough. When the sun dipped low, the visitors drifted off, leaving behind a yard full of boot prints and something like peace. Maggie leaned against the porch rail, watching the last wagon roll away. "Funny how standing still changes things." Ethan joined her. "Funny how fear shrinks when you look at it long enough." She smiled at that. Small, real. The ridge called to them again before the light fully faded. They walked up together, slow and unhurried, the grass brushing their boots. The wind moved gentle now, no teeth in it. Ethan stopped near the crest. Two simple wooden crosses stood there, weathered and straight. "I buried them here," he said, "Sarah and the baby." Maggie took his hand. "Didn't rush him. My daughter's buried in Missouri," she said. "I never went back." They stood in silence, two people shaped by graves they could not visit. "Do you think they'd forgive us?" Maggie asked softly, "for choosing to live?" Ethan looked out across the land, the fences, the creek, the house with light in its windows. "I think," he said, "they'd be angry if we didn't." She nodded, tears catching but not falling. "Then let's not waste it," she said. They married the next week. No church, no crowd, just sky and land and witnesses who mattered. Jasper stood grinning, hat in hand. Martha dabbed at her eyes and pretended not to. Vows were spoken plain and honest. "Every good thing worth having comes the hard way," Ethan said. "And every hard thing's lighter when it's shared," Maggie replied. He slid the ring onto her finger. Simple gold. Nothing fancy. Enough. When they kissed, it wasn't for show. It was for truth. That night they stood together at the threshold of the house. The door stood open wide. Light spilled out onto the land like a promise. Inside, the wooden bird hung on the mantel, catching the firelight, its shadow stretching like wings. Maggie wore the coat he'd bought her months before, though the air was warm now. She wore it because it meant something. Because it had been the first kindness. The first crack in a wall neither of them knew how to tear down alone. Ethan took her hand, calloused fingers gentle against hers. Outside, wolves howled far off. Not a threat. Just the land singing its old song. Funny, Maggie said, leaning into him. I came here asking for work. Ethan smiled. You found more than wages. They stepped inside together, the door closed behind them, soft as a prayer. Ahead lay a life built slow, log by log, choice by choice. Not perfect, not easy, but earned. Through courage, through work, through love that refused to quit when the world said it should. The ranch settled into evening quiet. Cattle lowed soft in the pasture. Chickens roosted safe. Stars stitched the sky whole. Two people who had been broken had built something that held. And that, Ethan knew as he held his wife close, was worth more than all the judgment in the world. Home had finally found them.